2023, I'm hoping that the WCC will have a great impact in the work it does, and particularly on the issues of justice. I'm hoping that we will be able to inspire and excite member churches to get involved in justice issues, to enable them to be able to realize that what is happening in one part of the world happens to them as well and affects them, as we have seen in the Ukraine-Russia situation. Now, many things have emerged from the WCC General Assembly, and what we are looking forward to doing is to work on a strategic plan. And that strategic plan speaks about the pilgrimage of justice, reconciliation, and unity. And in that, we are focusing on issues of climate change. We are focusing on issues of economic justice, gender justice, ecological justice as part of the climate change emergency situation, but also a special commission on health and healing. The WCC is a fellowship of churches, and the member churches are crucial in terms of our work and what we do. But although member churches are important in terms of our composition, we go beyond that to be able to reach out to the world. All churches are significant. All of them make up the family. And when one suffers, we all suffer. When one rejoices, we all rejoice. We are a fellowship of churches, and every church is of equal importance to the council itself. We also are looking at making visits to the regions. And one of the things I'm really hoping to do is to increase the development of our regional connections and responsibilities. Member churches need to be connected quite strongly with the fellowship, and we need to do that more intentionally. The regions are there, the member churches are there, and we have elected, as you know, presidents in the different regions. And one of the things that I will be doing more specifically is to work with the presidents in those regions, because I'm hoping somehow that with working with the presidents and working in the regions, that we will lift the profile of the WCC. And that's something that I believe very strongly in, because I believe that the WCC has so much to give to the world. I believe that the WCC has so much to offer to member churches. And because I believe in what we do, and more particularly, I believe that we are called by God to serve God's purpose in the world. And because I believe that very strongly, I believe in lifting the profile of the WCC. Now, as you know, the WCC is situated in Geneva. And we are blessed to have, in this particular context, many global bodies that are dealing with global issues. The World Health Organization, the ILO, the International Labour Organization, Red Cross, and so forth, the UN. All of these are important bodies that are doing global work. And as General Secretary of the WCC, I believe that we need to be connected with these different NGOs, that we need to be working on a wider global platform, and therefore I'll be introducing myself to these people as well in order to find out how we can work together in achieving the common good of creating a world that is better for all people. I will say to these member churches, or these churches and pastors in small congregations, there are big issues in the world that we all have to tackle together, and you cannot tackle them alone. And even issues in your own context, you cannot tackle them alone. And our faith calls us to actually respond to these situations that we face. But because you cannot do it alone, the WCC provides a wider platform for you to be able to seek assistance and call on others to journey with you. And the WCC provides a platform for dialogue, where we bring up all of these controversial issues and how we as Christians are struggling with these issues. The WCC will allow you in your small congregation to be drawn into a body of bigger a conversation, to understand the different dynamics of theology and doctrine and life and experiences, where we can draw from the wealth of other Christians. But the other important thing is to realize that to encourage and to engage spiritual engagement, we need a bigger family. And I will say to a pastor in a small church, you're part of a big spiritual family. And it is a joy of knowing that God is the God who actually encompasses the earth. Heaven and earth belongs to the Lord. And you being connected with a wider church with over half a billion Christians. Wow, this provides you an inroad to be connected with a great body of Christians. I think we are driven by faith, and we believe that God has called us for a particular purpose and mission in the world, and we will not stop engaging that, even with limited resources. But some of the challenges are, in addition to that, is how do we move churches in general from micro vision to macro thinking? Because a lot of churches and a lot of denominations tend to be focused on themselves. They tend to think about, oh, what's happening in my church? What's happening to my denomination? And whatever the challenges are within that denomination and church, whether it is financial, whether it is theological, and churches have the problems, you know. And sometimes we get so narrowed by that we actually fail to realize the bigger vision. And I think the task of the WCC is to be able to try and motivate and move and mobilize churches from a micro vision to a macro vision. And the macro vision, as we've been speaking about already, is the bigger vision of the world, the bigger vision of Christian unity, the bigger vision of churches coming together to deal with the big wicked problems in the world. Let's make sure that the WCC is out there, creating an impact, and also becoming known, not only to member churches, but to all churches in the world, and to all people who are not even part of the Christian faith. The previous pilgrimage, showed us in the last 8 years that it actually included all people. And the pilgrimage actually went to meet people in the local context. And the reports that we've got back from the impact of that is significant, because it helped mobilize people, it helped people to understand their own context, it helped people to be drawn into a broader context, it helped people in their own situations to find support and journey. Solidarity was the key thing. And the reports are often very moving stories. And that's a big word, stories, because the pilgrimage of justice and peace captured the stories of people, but also shared not only their stories, but shared the stories of the people around the world who managed to go to journey with them in the context. And that continues. And this is the reason why the assembly, the 11th assembly, also decided that we will continue with the pilgrimage. And therefore, we are now calling it the pilgrimage of justice, reconciliation, and unity. But the journey is not only with Christians, as I said. The journey is with all people in all contexts and in the world at large. And so it's a journey that brings people from different religions together. It is a journey that actually speaks of interfaith dialogue, interfaith collaboration and cooperation, interreligious networking. When we deal with the big problems in the world, we cannot just deal with them as Christians. We need to deal with them with other religions as well. So the pilgrimage certainly involves all people from different sectors. The pilgrimage transects actually social, political, economic issues, and therefore it is a multiple experience. Well, the ecumenical movements can never succeed into the future without the involvement of young people. And if we are at a miss of including young people right now, then we are actually jeopardizing the future of the ecumenical journey. Young people are the ones who bring new ways of thinking, new challenges, new insights, new appreciation of things, and new levels of engagement. And because young people bring these to us, we cannot neglect young people. We cannot say, let's wait till later. They are the church of today. Young people need to be involved in faith decisions, in church decisions, in governance issues, in ecumenical movements in terms of the programs, in a very in-depth way, because without their participation, we are at a very serious loss. We need them to bring new life to our churches. We need them to speak into our worship, in as much as we need them to speak into our theology and doctrine and every aspect of Christian life and living, but also to speak to the world of how they can help us to transform the world in the way in which God calls us to. Well, I certainly think that you cannot talk about unity without talking about justice. They go together, because unity, true unity, can only come from justice where justice is. And as we work towards justice, we actually can then foster unity. So I think the dichotomy between unity and justice is a false dichotomy. I think it's an important thing to understand that true unity must include in the agenda justice issues as well. To be prophetic means to really have the courage to be able to stand up for truth, to be able to voice the concerns of the voiceless, to champion the cause of those who are living in unjust situations and are not able to speak for themselves. To be prophetic means to speak truth to power, but also to be prophetic means to speak truth to ourselves. And very often, I think we fail to do that. And the church fails to be prophetic to its own self. So if we want to be prophetic to the world, we need to also challenge ourselves. What are we saying about our faith? What is God saying to us? How does what we say to the world relate to ourselves in terms of our own practices and beliefs and what we say and what we do? Unfortunately, today we have too much of focus on wealth and prosperity, and this influence too has found its ways into the church. And the church dancing with power is often not the way to go. The church being where people hurt, the church being where people are being victimized and dehumanized, is where the church should be. I think just to say that we are in a new phase in terms of the WCC. We have new leadership in some positions in senior leadership. And I really do believe that I think the WCC should be more focused on lifting its profile in the world. The WCC should actually draw together its member churches in a more cohesive way, and we should mobilize support and work together. We should provide a platform which is of a global reach for member churches and for others to participate. But more particularly, our task is to bring churches together to seek to fulfill the mission of Christ in the world. And as the theme for the assembly, Christ's love moves the world. And I believe that as the WCC, we are called to engage the love of Christ and proclaim the love of Christ to move the world to where God wants it to be, as we seek justice, as we seek righteousness, as we seek peace, but also as we seek to build a better world for all. The most important thing I want to say as well is that the WCC creates space, a safe space, an open space for people to engage on a number of different issues, whether they're controversial, subjective. We create these spaces so that people can come together and talk. And dialogue is something that we have been encouraging and will continue to encourage. And so I'm hoping that the WCC will continue to generate that kind of interest, will be able to be seen as a body that is there not only for churches, but for the world, because we stand in the name of God to proclaim God's presence in the world at large.